It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Let's welcome back to the program. We have candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court, Mr. David Sterling, is back with us. David, good morning to you. How you been?
Good morning. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm doing great this morning.
Awesome. How's the campaign going?
It's going well. Just working real hard out here on the campaign trail. I mean, it is a statewide race, and it can be exhausting. I'm glad to have the support of my wife and my daughter out here on the campaign trail. I mean, I'm kind of having to divide and conquer as we have multiple campaign events all over the state. But I mean, it's exhausting, but at the same time, it's very energizing getting out there and meeting all the voters and getting a lot of encouragement and support from all over the state.
Yeah. It just kind of dawned on me. I mean, I know you're running against, an incumbent justice, but there's probably most people that don't even know, who the Supreme Court is, and so in a lot of ways, these statewide races, it's kind of anybody's game. And I mean, the power of incumbency is a big deal, but I do think that, this is a way for you to meet folks and say, hey, vote for me. And I think a lot of people will, because they don't really know who the Supreme Court is made up of right now.
Well, it's a good point, and you're right. A lot of people don't really understand how it's structured, but I mean, there are 7 justices on the Supreme Court, and the terms that we're elected to, or I'm hoping to be elected to, they're 8-year terms. And but the terms are staggered to try to lend some stability to the court, where there's not a massive turnover in any particular year. And this year, the person that's up for re-election is Justice Courtney Goodson, and that's who I'm running against.
So what do you hear? I mean, when you talk to folks on the campaign trail, what do they think about generally the judicial branch of government? Do they have complaints? Do they have praises?
Well, I think in general, people are concerned about the judicial branch. I mean, I think that the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh kind of brought everything to the forefront as far as how important the third branch of government is. People often focus on the legislative branch and the executive branch, and then they totally forget about the judicial branch, particularly in Arkansas. I mean, it's almost like you said, no one really knows who they are. I mean, we've got a Chief Justice Dan Kemp, who my opponent ran against for Chief Justice 2 years ago, and when she lost that race, she had to go back and finish out her the last 2 years of her term, and those come to an end this year, just in a couple of months now, and that's why I'm running against her. But then you have Justice Josephine Hart, Justice Karen Baker, Sean Womack, Rhonda Wood, and Robin Wynn, and that makes up the 7 of those. But most people haven't even heard those names before, because they're not out there out front like some of the legislators or the governor's, the governor is, and that sort of thing. And they just kind of get lost in the shuffle. But it's a very, very, very important branch of our government that really serves as a check and balance on the executive and the legislative branches.
We're talking with David Sterling. He's a candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. Now, David, I understand if you have to say, I can't comment on this or that because, these judicial races are technically nonpartisan. But, I mean, it's in the news today, reminding us that there's this ethics issue with the Supreme Court right now because of what they said to a lower judge, Wendell Griffin, about not being able to rule on death penalty cases because he participated in some sort of naturalist tableau theater at a anti-death penalty protest. Do you have any thoughts on that? Can you comment on what your take on the situation is?
Well, I think it's probably best for me not to comment on it, only in the sense that I don't know how soon there will be a hearing on that. But a lot of times these cases get filed. They, as far as an appeal filed, then there will be a briefing schedule. And in this particular case, there's going to have to be a number of recusals because 5 of the 7 justices are challenging those charges and appealing those. And it may be a couple months before there's any hearing on this. I'm not sure what the schedule is going to be, but hopefully I'll be on the court at that time, and it'll be one less recusal if I don't comment on it right now.
I got you. Yeah, and I figured that was the case. If you win, then you'll have to be ruling on this. So, Again, we're talking with David Sterling. Okay, let's talk about judicial philosophy. Now, in my opinion, there are two ways to look at the Constitution, whether it's Arkansas Constitution, the United States Constitution, or just law in general. And that's whether or not you believe in a concept of a living document where the words, when they were written, at whatever time they were written, can change over time. It's an idea that somehow human nature changes and evolves, and so these words that were meant, for another generation need to evolve as well. Versus another, there's the second one, which is the originalist intent, saying, hey, we need to be true to what the law says now because, it was written in a certain way, and we need to honor that. What are your thoughts on those two competing judicial philosophies?
Well, I'm definitely an originalist. I've been here on the campaign trail all year, ever since late January, early February, talking about my judicial philosophy of what I call judicial conservatism, which is, again, different from political conservatism, but, from a judicial standpoint, it's based on the Constitution. I tell people I'm an originalist. I'm a textualist. I believe in judicial restraint. And I believe in separation of powers, and that there are three branches of government. You have the legislative branch that passes laws, the executive branch that enforces them, and the judicial branch that interprets them and applies the law to the facts and circumstances of each case in a fair and impartial way. And that judges should never legislate from the bench. They should leave that to the people and the people they elect to the legislative branch. But as far as the Constitution goes, I'm as much of an originalist as they come, and I really have read a lot of the works of and the opinions of Justice Scalia. I think that he really embodied originalism more than anybody else, and he articulated it better than anyone I've ever heard articulate it. And I'm definitely a student of Justice Scalia, and I wish he were still with us.
Yeah, I think we all do. We're talking again with David Sterling. He's a candidate for the Arkansas Supreme Court. You said something that I think a lot of people agree with, and it resonated just now, that you don't believe that the judicial branch should legislate from the bench. So the reverse of that, I'm curious, do you believe that the legislative branch should judge or make rulings from the State House? And what I don't. You get what I'm saying here? I'm specifically talking about, should the legislative branch be able to set rules of evidence for the court?
Oh, I see where you're going. You're talking about issue one, man.
Well, I didn't want to take
me down that.
I did. Hey, I was thinking to myself, well, he can't maybe comment. Maybe he can't comment directly on issue one, but maybe he can answer a specific. Anyway, you see what I was trying to do there.
I saw that one coming. Yeah, I better stay out of that fight for right now. I will tell you this. I mean, people have asked me pretty much all throughout the summer and fall about my stance on issue one. And I tell people this. I mean, the voters of Arkansas are going to vote on November 6th whether to amend our Constitution with issue one, or to not amend our Constitution by rejecting issue one. I'm on the ballot on that same day, and I will take office if I'm elected on January 1st, and I will be true to the Constitution in either its amended form or its non-amended form, whether I take office on January 1st. So I'm going to let the people speak on that, and I promise the people that I will enforce the Constitution that I'm handed when I take office on January 1st.
All right, I think that would certainly go in line with your originalist constitutional philosophy. So I think that's good.
Well, it goes along with what you were saying just now, too. I mean, people ask me, the same question you're talking about as far as an originalist, or, if I believe that the Constitution is a living, breathing document. And I do, but only to the extent that the Constitution has provisions in it for amendment. And they shouldn't. And if you want to amend the Constitution, you do exactly what the people are doing right now with some of these issues that are on the ballot. And just following the methodology that is laid out in the Constitution itself as far as amending it. But I don't think that the Constitution should ever be amended by judicial fiat.
Mm-hmm. No, and I agree with you there. And I think that's one of the reasons we saw such a fight over the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings, because, the left's major victories and now I know this is getting political, but I'm just saying the left's major victories to me appear to come from an overactive judiciary, not so much legislative victories. And even when they have legislative victories like Obamacare, then the architects come out later and said, yeah, we had to lie to everybody to get this thing passed. So I think, the courts are very, certainly very important. And David, certainly, I'm really glad that I'm glad you decided to throw your hat in the ring, and, you're getting to know the folks of Arkansas. So, like, what's next for you on the campaign stop? Where are you going to be next?
Well, today I've actually taken a day off. That's been the challenging thing about this race is I am a state employee still. I serve as chief counsel at the Arkansas Department of Human Services, where I've done that for the last 3.5 years, really, fighting for the most vulnerable citizens in our state. And but I've always got people. I've always got people looking over my shoulder, making sure that I'm not stepping out of line or anything like that as a state employee, not campaigning on state time and that sort of thing. And I've been very, very diligent making sure I don't do that. I've got to use personal leave for everything I do. So on the campaign trail. So today I've taken the day off. I'm going to head down to Hot Springs Village and meet with some voters down there at a political forum, candidates forum, and then I'm going to head over and cut a radio ad, and then headed to Maumelle this evening. And there's a few other things on the campaign agenda today too that, you're always picking and choosing. Every day there's probably 6 or 8 different things. But, it's challenging and being all over the state. I mean, just a few weeks ago, I was on a Wednesday night, I was in Helena over in East Arkansas. The next night on Thursday, I was down in Hope in Southwest Arkansas. The next day on Friday, I was back in Central Arkansas here in Little Rock for an event. Saturday morning, I woke up and headed down to Arkadelphia in Southwest Arkansas. Sunday, I was back here in Little Rock going to church and, recharging my batteries. Monday, I was in Newport, Northeast Arkansas. Tuesday in Bentonville in extreme Northwest Arkansas. Wednesday in Lake Village in extreme Southeast Arkansas.
Wow.
Thursday in Fort Smith, and then Friday back in Little Rock. So, all that stuff is done, on my own time, after hours, weekends, that sort of thing. But, it is a real strain on, physically as well as mentally.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when you get there and talking to the voters and talking to them about their concerns, talking to them about, their visions for the judiciary, understanding my judicial philosophy and being very, very encouraging. And it's been great. And, and like I said, my wife and my daughter have been very, very supportive out there, helping me cover some of these events and just being very supportive when I'm at home. And so it's been a very, very encouraging campaign so far, and we're down to the last few days of it right now, just 3 more weeks. Early voting starts actually on Monday, and obviously Election Day, November 6th. So we're closing in on the last few days of this campaign, and I'm looking forward to November 7th.
I'm glad you said early voting starts on Monday, because I think earlier in the hour I said it started on Tuesday, and that's just because I'm just got November 6th stuck in my mind. David Sterling, really appreciate coming on the show. Got one last question, and I think
Sure.
I think it fits here because you're just talking about going everywhere and campaigning all across the state. There was talk, 2 years ago, about getting rid of the election process, the democratic process of Supreme Court justices, and moving to an appointment-based system, where you have to kind of, well, what I would say, you have to climb the elite ladder to even get a shot of consideration, versus just letting the people decide. Where do you fall on that? Do you like things the way they are, or you think we should move to an appointment-based system?
Well, I believe in the Constitution. Our Constitution has judges being elected here in the state. And, if the people want to change that at some point and move to an appointment process like some of the other states have, I'm fine with that. But honestly, this has been great, getting out here and actually meeting people and trying to convince them that my judicial philosophy is better than my opponent's judicial philosophy. Just, one-on-one, hand-to-hand, face-to-face, eye-to-eye, telling people about my judicial philosophy and giving them a choice, versus another way of appointment where you just have to convince one person or a panel of people that your judicial philosophy is what should be on the court. And, there's pros and cons no matter which way you go on this. If you do appointments, you see it on the federal level. Those are lifetime appointments, and once a certain political party is in charge and they put somebody on the on the bench, they're there for the rest of their life. And even if the political winds shift, they're still there. And that's a very good thing, but it also can be a very bad thing. So it just depends on your perspective on this. But I think that there's pros and cons to either one. And personally, I just support the one that the Constitution outlines in our state right now.
All right. David Sterling, Arkansas Supreme Court candidate. Early voting starts Monday. The election's November 6th. David, thank you so much for spending time with us, and you have a great day.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
All right, folks.